Our Heavenly Father, we come praising you this night with thanksgiving in our hearts, because this is a joyous occasion. This is a time of reunion and a great privilege for us all. We thank you for these moments that you have provided us for this kind of joy. We thank you for education. We thank you especially for the education that Augsburg has seen fit to give down through the years. We thank you for this school and this campus. And now, Lord, we thank you especially for these few moments as we honor some of the athletic greats in the history of this school, one facet of its educational program. We thank you for these men that are up here on this stage, men who were exemplary as athletes, examples, and had a great impact on youth. Now we ask you to bless this occasion for us, all that we do, and ask that it be pleasing and glorifying to you. We ask it all in Jesus the Christ's name. Amen. Officially, I want to welcome you to this first of many, we hope, evenings when we will be inducting into a newly organized Augsburg Athletic Hall of Fame, the athletic greats of the past. At this time, we're going to adhere rather tightly to the program here because there are other homecoming events, of course, to take place. At this time, then, as your program points up, I'm going to call on Mr. Robert Strumman, the soccer team captain, to come up with a word of greeting.
When Jiroy mentioned to me a couple days ago that he would like to give a short presentation or short greeting to all this distinguished alumni and for this Hall of Fame, I have a kind of a funny feeling that his interpretation of short and mine were quite different, and maybe we'll just chalk that up as part of the generation gap, but we'll just let it go. When he first mentioned it, one of my first reactions was fear. Matter of fact, I think one of my last reactions is fear right now too. And I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to start bragging about our soccer team, because we were 10-0 at the time, and we only had 2 games left, so I thought we felt rather safe. Well, the inevitable happened, and last Friday, or matter of fact yesterday, Gustavus beat us 1-0, and that kind of shot my hopes of bragging about an undefeated team. But it's probably just as well, because soccer wasn't part of the athletic program back in the earlier years of the Augsburg College, and it's probably be best for me to talk about this distinguished alumni that we have here and that we are honoring. For as you know, that it was this alumni that was the foundation of the athletic program. As a matter of fact, it was the same alumni that brought the only and very elusive soccer championship that Augsburg had back in 1926, roughly, and that's quite a feat, seeing that that's something we haven't been able to do for the last 37 years, and it surely we haven't been trying. But I'd like to pay my tribute to you, distinguished alumni, for the fantastic job you have done for us, and I just hope that in the near future we'll be able to do something that you were able to do 37 years ago, and that's to bring a championship in the football team, and hopefully we'll do the same in the soccer team this year. Thank you.
The next 2 I'll call on is Phil Lundeen and Jay Smith. Maybe with Jay's leg, I should have called him a little earlier so we could have gotten started here. But come on up.
I guess no homecoming can be a complete success without a victory in the football game, so sorry the soccer team lost, but at least we did our part. On behalf of the 1973 football team and all the athletes at Augsburg College, I'd like to welcome you here tonight and extend a special congratulations to those who are honored here tonight.
Without welcoming you to death too much longer, I'd like to say that whoever thought of instituting a Hall of Fame here at Augsburg couldn't have really thought of a better time to do so than during homecoming. Although many of the traditions of homecoming have been changed or modified, I feel the essence of homecoming still remains, and that's the idea of coming back and more or less thinking about old times. And I feel that there's probably no better way to do that than to start honoring those that have contributed to Augsburg in the past and schools right now too. So thank you.
At this time, I'd like to introduce a little bit of the background that went into this. Informally, over at the smorgasbord this evening, Dr. Anderson pointed up that he had suggested this 8 years ago. And lest you think I was the foot dragger, I would like to inform you that I hadn't heard about it, or I didn't hear about it until early this fall. So somewhere in between here, things broke down apparently, but this last spring, I know, Dr. Anderson again brought forward the idea of the Athletic Hall of Fame here at Augsburg, and the Board of Regents kind of seconded the motion, I guess, and then it was instigated. It was thought then that, as has been pointed out, this would be the best time to honor these first recipients of this award. Because I am the faculty representative in the athletic conference, the Minnesota Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, it was decided that I should probably call together a committee. But if you know G. Roy, and I'm sure you do, really G. Roy did more of it than I. So the committee was ultimately called together, and I convened that committee. And now I'd like to introduce the rest of the committee to you so that you know who is responsible for bringing this group here tonight. Now, some of them are on the stage and some are down in the audience, but when I call your names, I'd like to have you stand so that everybody knows who you are. First of all, the chairman of the committee, Dr. Arthur Nash, who was formerly an MIAC faculty representative. And then down in the audience, a former employee, an alumnus of the college, and one who, well, if you go to the Augsburg games at all, you never fail to see Art Engen and Mrs. Engen at the ball games. Art, would you stand too? Another member of the committee. And again, if you've been to the basketball games at all, you have looked over at the scorekeeper's table, and at least up until a very short time ago, there was Gus Nelson, and Gus Nelson was a part of our committee. Gus, would you stand up, please? And then another one that you all know is up here on the stage with us, and that's Dick Pouts. And again, he was even an athletic director here at Augsburg at one time, so Dick Pouts was a part of that committee. And then, as I pointed out, we had G. Roy Carlson with us also as a kind of resource person to keep us on the straight and narrow, so to speak, and supply us with some of the information that we needed about some of the histories that, of biographies and so on that we needed. The committee now has set up criteria for continuing the existence of a committee. If for any reason there should have to be a replacement on the committee or added to the committee, some person, there is a way of accomplishing this, and so this committee will continue to serve and continue this kind of work. Now, secondly, I think you should know something about how these people were chosen tonight. It was a lengthy process. before any personalities at all were considered, a series of criteria here were set up, and I'd like to let you in on just what these were. After all, we wanted to give recognition to the former Augsburg athletic greats for the honor of it, yes, but because we want the alumni, we want the students, we want the public to be aware, first of all, of these men and to take pride in them and in our program here at Augsburg College. And so the way of doing this was to get this thing going tonight. In order to be selected tonight, these persons must have been alumni of the college. That was one criterion. Secondly, they were to have achieved outstanding achievement in at least one sport while they were here. Thirdly, they should have made a contribution as far as student leadership is concerned, or as a civic or professional leader, or contributed to the advancement of athletics here at Augsburg College. And each one of these persons has filled that bill. We also decided that we should certainly give consideration to persons even though deceased. And so that was another criterion that we added to the lot. And finally, we decided that after this first year, we would restrict as a maximum number of recipients to 6. This first year, in order to get it off to a good start and good solid foundation, we have chosen, as you can see, more than 6. But from now on, there will be 6 persons at the most chosen each year. Now, what will be awarded to these persons? To the deceased members, their picture, which you will see up here on the stage in front of me, their picture will be placed at the south end of the lounge across the hall from where you came in. And this will be put in an area called the Augsburg Hall of Fame, all these pictures. And secondly, whomever receives the award or represents that individual here will receive a framed certificate also of this event. For those living members that will be honored tonight, their picture also will be placed out there in the south end of the lobby or lounge area, and they will receive a plaque tonight commemorating this event as they are inducted into this Hall of Fame. Now, the methods for presentation in the future may vary. We may find year after year that, hopefully at least, we will learn from past experience and find better ways of putting on this affair each year. And we're very hopeful, as Giroy has already pointed out to some of you, that you will bring your suggestions to us to better this affair. But as far as the choosing is concerned, these are the criterion that have been set up, and they will be followed and adhered to in the future for the future recipients of this induction ceremony. Now that, I guess, gives you a little bit of background into the program, into the Augsburg Athletic Hall of Fame. Now at this time, I'm going to call upon Dr. Anderson to present these recipients to you and also to present them then with their award. Dr. Anderson.
Mr. Mickelberg, honored athletes and their representatives, and ladies and gentlemen. I said at the honors convocation yesterday that there are very happy duties that fall to the president of a college, and there are a lot of people who make out as though this job of being a president of a college is a difficult one. Well, I can tell you that it has a lot of joys and a lot of heartwarming experiences, and one of these is taking place tonight in the fulfillment of something that I have felt for some time would add to what I believe is so important for any institution, and that is to have justifiable pride in itself. We need to be justifiably proud of ourselves. Sometimes I think that our Scandinavian Lutheran background has made it so that we are supposed to be ashamed of ourselves all the time. Well, that's not the case, I don't believe. The good book says that we are to love others as we love ourselves. And it seems to me that this is one way in which we recognize the worth and the value of this institution by paying honor to those who have played a significant part in its athletic history. So thank you, Mr. Mickelberg, for the explanation that you've given, and may I say also thank you to you for representing the college so well to the MIAC. Our faculty representative is not only faithful as a faculty member on that MIAC committee, but Irv happens to be also the secretary, and I read the minutes of those meetings very carefully. The Augsburg Athletic Hall of Fame, as you have heard, is being established this year in order to recognize those who have participated in the college's long and proud athletic history. And the selections that have been made on the basis of the criteria that Mr. Mickelberg has described. It might be well for a moment and to recall the history and growth of intercollegiate athletics here at Augsburg College. Augsburg entered the MIAC conference in 1924. It was then called the Minnesota College Conference at that time. And the only sport that Augsburg participated in that year was basketball. But 2 years later, the college entered a team in conference play in the sport of baseball. And in 1927, a football team was entered in the conference. That year, in 1927, Augsburg won its first basketball championship. And the other day, a man who many of you know, Bear Helen, who is a distinguished alumnus of this institution, and who served for many years as a missionary on the Santal in India, said, "I have a telegram that I think you'd like to have." I said, "What is it all about?" He explained it to me. He said that in 1927, when he was on the mission field in India, a man pedaled a bicycle some 30, 40 miles with a cablegram. And the cablegram is in my hand. And as the man who pedaled his bicycle out to where Bear Helen was stationed handed the telegram to Helen, he said, "I don't think anybody died." And Helen looked at the telegram, and it simply said, "Greetings, championship, Augies." And Helen looked at him and said, "I think somebody died, probably the Swedes at St. Peter." But Irv, if there are any mementos for the Athletic Hall of Fame, I kind of think that that particular cablegram ought to be included among the memorabilia. In 1928, Augsburg tied St. Thomas for its first and only football championship, and we almost had a championship game 2 weeks ago with St. Thomas, but we have to reserve the privilege of overcoming them for another year. 1928, Augsburg had a hockey team. It was made up mostly of the Hansen brothers, Oscar, Emil, Emery, Louis, and Joseph. And that was quite a time. The season was played and Augsburg was undefeated. They entered a tournament play and scored 22 goals while holding the opponent scoreless. Saugusted, that's something to try for. Hockey was adopted as a conference sport, so Augsburg won its first hockey championship in 1928. The hockey team was considered to play in the Olympics that year. In fact, I'm told that it was the runner-up. The first organized participation in sports, not in the conference, but in sports here at Augsburg, was in the field of gymnastics. Now, before I go to the presentation of these citations, I'd just like to call your attention to the fact that Dr. Bernard Christensen, President Emeritus of Augsburg, has written a pamphlet entitled Si Melby of Augsburg, and I understand that copies are available for you as you leave the door this evening. If you're going out because you forgot that, G. Roy, you better hurry. All right. I'm sure somebody will want to have it. Let me begin then with a man who many of us knew, revered, and honored, and for whom the building in which we are gathered is named. John Sigurd Si Melby, of the class of 11, was born February 20th, 1887 in Stoughton, Wisconsin. He came to Augsburg in the fall of 1907, where he spent 7 years as a student in the academy and the college. Following his graduation from the college and from the Theological Seminary in 1914, he did postgraduate work during several summer sessions at the University of Washington from 16 to 18, at the Biblical Seminary in New York City during the year 1919 and 20, as well as engaging in additional graduate work at the University of Minnesota. Professor Melby began his teaching career as an instructor at Bethania College, Everett, Washington in 1914. He remained there until he entered war service in 1917, and immediately after the close of World War I, he entered the teaching profession as an instructor at Columbia College in Everett, Washington. He came to Augsburg as an instructor and dean of men in 1920, rendering continuous service as a teacher from 1920 until 2 weeks prior to his death in 1944 at the very early age of 56. During his 24 years as a faculty member at Augsburg, he served as Dean of Men from 1920 to 41, as head of the Department of Christianity from 23 to 44, and as basketball coach from 23 to 33, except for the year 29 and 30 when he had a leave of absence for further study. During most of this time, he was also athletic director. Professor Melby married Miss Nina Quinn of New York in 1923. She died 2 years later in 1925. This hall, as I have said, is named in his honor. This evening, Si is being represented by his 2 nephews. And accepting these certificates are Tony Brewster and William Brewster from the city of Madison. I shared most of the football game with them this afternoon, and they are so knowledgeable that I know more about the game than I have ever learned before, listening to them tell me what was going on. So I'm very happy now to present these plaques to these 2 representatives of a man whom we all love, Si Melby, and I'll ask them to come forward and receive these plaques, and I understand that one of them will go to your sister. Is that his sister? Is that right? Come forward and receive these if you will, please. You're welcome. And I'll let you take both of them. We're following you later. Arthur Hauser, class of 30, claimed Little Falls as his hometown. His main interest was athletics. He played 3 years of basketball, was a member of the 27 championship basketball team, and his best year in basketball was the following year when he played as a regular. His ability in football was outstanding. He was an all-state end, and he was the receiver of the passes that were thrown by John Colasar. It was the most famous passing combination at that time in the State College Conference. Besides being an excellent end, he did the punting, at which he was very proficient. He was also a drop kicker for extra points after touchdowns. I wonder how long it's been since anybody saw a drop kick for a point after touchdown. The most talked about drop kick was the championship game with St. Thomas in 1928. Most people thought Dooley's kick was good, but not so the officials. Gus Nelson referred to this in his article recently in the Minneapolis Star. And because there was no point after touchdown, Augsburg and St. Thomas tied for the championship. Dooley, as he was called, was captain of the championship football team in 28 and played on 3 of Augsburg's football teams. In 26, the team in which he played in their first year of football defeated Concordia. 27, they tied for second place and then won the championship in 28. Dooley also played baseball and contributed much to the success of the team. We have tried to contact some of Arthur's relatives, but his brother is deceased, and we were unable to make contact with any of his family or make them aware of recognition at this time. To represent him is Dr. Arthur Nash, who is a member of the Hall of Fame committee and who felt that Dooley Hauser was truly worthy of the honor of being placed in the Hall of Fame here at Augsburg College. Dr. Nash, will you come forward and receive these plaques on behalf of John Colasar, class of 1930. John is probably one of the best sport athletes that ever wore the maroon and gray of Augsburg College. He played baseball and was an outstanding pitcher, but he is far better known as a quarterback in football, the passer in the great Coley-Taduli passing combination. He was an all-state selection in football for 3 years. As a basketball player, it was said of him that he was the type of player that made many call him the playing coach. He was an all-state representative in basketball all 4 years that he participated here at Augsburg. He was presented the Honor Athlete Award in both 1929 and 1930. Some of us feel that it was unfortunate that we did not get the opportunity to see him perform, but his name was still very much in evidence when some of us came here to Augsburg in the 30s. From a yearbook we quote, "No athlete will be more greatly missed than Coley, our invincible phantom of the courts." He played on the championship football team of 28. He also played on the basketball championship team of 27. To represent him this evening are his 2 sons, William and John. And I'll ask them to come forward and receive these plaques, one for each of them and one for Mr. Colasar's wife, who is also in the audience and who will be introduced later. Albert Thorson, '09. Played basketball during his 4 years at Augsburg College. Since the college did not have a team during the years 6 and 7, he and his brothers Carl and Ed, plus 4 other Augsburg students, played on a Riverside team. In 1908, Augsburg recognized basketball and played against teams that are now a part of the state conference. The college hired him with salary to be in charge of the gym and the athletic program, and he was a player coach on the Augsburg basketball team, thus becoming Augsburg's first, if unofficial, athletic director. Thorson's greatest highlight in athletics at Augsburg was being a member of the first basketball team. He earned 2 letters, but because Augsburg was not awarding the A at the time, he had to wait 16 years before it was given to him. While a college student, he also played in the band. Thorson says he cherishes the memory and his past association with the Augsburg athletic program. He went to school with Si Melby, and Si was one of his closest friends. After leaving college, he played professional basketball 1912 to 16 with the Crystal Sugar team in Chaska. He farmed for about 9 years near Watertown and became manager of the Watertown Cooperative Grain and Fuel Company. During World War II, he worked in the shipyards in Honolulu and has served as Watertown's mayor. He's a member of the Masonic Lodge and now lives in Madison, Wisconsin. He played much amateur baseball in and around Watertown and managed teams there for a number of years. He also managed an independent baseball team known as the Farmers All-Stars. And among the players were such notables as Dick Siebert, Mel Wade, formerly of the Washington Senators, and Milt Broom. Now he is active as a committeeman for the Boy Scouts. Among the highlights of his life, he lists his marriage to his wife Esther, married 60 years, pride in his son Lauren, and his 3 grandchildren, Vicky, Timothy, and Suzanne. He remembers with delight the time back in 1939 when he played on the varsity alumni basketball team, or in that game. He was 51 at the time, going against his son, who was a member of the varsity squad. I am very pleased to present this plaque presented to Albert Thorson for membership in the Augsburg College Athletic Hall of Fame induction ceremony with the date October 27, 1973. Mr. Thorson. Harold A. Johnson, class of 15, a retired pastor now living in Minneapolis. During his years as a student at Augsburg, he participated in basketball, baseball, and physical culture. That was what the gym classes were called, I guess. He remembers the 1910-11 basketball season well, for it was the first Augsburg team to go through a season without a loss. He remembers his college friends for the inspiration and influence they had on his life during and after his Augsburg days. He holds membership in the American Federation of Lutheran Brotherhoods, which included activity in the Lutheran Scout Committee, both locally and nationally. He held office with the National Federation and was a member of the committee that organized the Lutheran Boy Scouts in Minneapolis. Secretary of the Associated Lutheran Welfare on the West Coast, he was a member of the Board of Directors of Boys and Old Folks Homes in the state of Washington. He worked with the committee to organize the first Bible camp at Medicine Lake, on a committee to organize the programs of Lutheran Bible camps, and to initiate Sunday School Teachers Institutes. He was a member of the Library Board at Enumclaw, Washington, and worked as chaplain for the enrollees at Rainier State School in Washington. He also worked with the Board of Parish Education Conference for the leadership educational courses, as well as conducting district Sunday School Teachers Institutes throughout the West Coast. He worked for the Minneapolis Park Board in developing and promoting playground and athletic activities. While there, he formed the game of diamond ball, now softball, but with the same rules. He organized Calvary Lutheran Church, LFC, in Spokane, which he calls the climax of his home mission work on the coast. All these activities, he said, were not for personal gain, but with the prayer and enthusiasm that I could be an inspiration and influence for good to the hundreds that I had contact with. Johnson and his wife, Miss Matilda, have one son, Gerald. I'm very pleased to be able to present this plaque to Harold A. Johnson for membership in the Augsburg College Athletic Hall of Fame. Dr. Johnson. Lyle Croce, and I guess everybody knows him as Choppy. 27, is retired and living in Tucson, Arizona. He and his wife Anna have 2 children, Robert and Patricia. At Augsburg, he played football and baseball and was a member of the 27 championship basketball team. He was selected as All-State guard in 26 in basketball and All-State forward in 1927. He remembers Augsburg for the Christian college education he received and for helping him to secure his first teaching position in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Croce says that having Si Melby select him to succeed Melby as basketball coach at Augsburg was one of the most meaningful experiences of his life. He also coached baseball and assisted in football, as well as teaching in the academy. Besides teaching at St. Cloud, he was the director of health, physical education, and safety at the high school, coached high school baseball, and coached the St. Cloud American Legion baseball team for many years. He directed Babe Ruth baseball and was recreation director for the city of St. Cloud from 1930 to 1937 during the summers. For his work, he was selected by the Junior Chamber of Commerce for outstanding service, an outstanding service award to the community. Croce did graduate work at the University of Minnesota and at St. Cloud State. He was a longtime member of the St. Cloud Lions Club and served as its president from 51 to 52. He was ordained an elder of the Presbyterian Church in St. Cloud. He also refereed 10 state high school basketball tournaments in the 30s and 40s. He moved to Tucson in 1965 and worked as a salesman for 3 years after retiring in 1968. Since then, he has been playing golf 2 or 3 times a week. A man should be so lucky. I am very pleased to present to Lyle this membership in the Augsburg College Athletic Hall of Fame. Ozzie Outall, class of 27 of Bloomington, Minnesota, was named a distinguished alumnus of Augsburg College in 1969. While a student at the college, he participated in both baseball and basketball, For these, he won the Athletic Scholarship Trophy in 26 and 27 and was president of the senior class. He was a member of the 1927 State College Basketball Championship team, captain of both basketball and baseball teams, and named All-State in baseball, shortstop, and basketball forward. He remembers Augsburg best for exemplifying and teaching him the value of Christian principles and the rewards associated with perseverance and dedication to worthwhile goals in life. Besides being named a distinguished alumnus, other meaningful moments in his life, according to him, were getting married and being appointed Director of Quality Control for General Mills Incorporated. He worked for General Mills for 38 years before retiring in 65. Among his positions were Chief Chemist of the Eastern Division and Manager of the Grocery Products Division. He was Chairman of the Technical Advisory Committee of Miller's National Federation and Chairman of the Weights and Measures Committee of the Federation. He served as Financial Secretary of Trinity Lutheran Church and also at Nokomis Heights Lutheran. He was Chairman of the Northwest Officials Association and active as a sports official for 30 years or more. He refereed the Minnesota State High School basketball tournament for 9 years and state tournaments in North Dakota for 3 years. He also did consulting work in Peru and in Chile through the auspices of the International Executive Service Corps of New York. Mr. Raudal and his wife Comfort have a daughter, Yvonne, and 2 sons, Robert and Wilmer. I have already presented a distinguished alumnus citation to Ozzie, but I'm glad to be able to add to his trophies by giving him this citation as a member of the Athletic Hall of Fame. Ozzie? Merrill R. Larson, 28, is a retired superintendent of schools and lives in Mora. He is married to the former Luella Halverson, and they have 2 sons, Dr. Merwin and Ronald M. At Augsburg, he was a member of the 1927 state championship basketball team, and in 1928 was elected captain of the football team. For his efforts, he was awarded the Bronze Award, Scholarship and Character, and a gold in basketball for being a member of the championship team. He was also granted the Augsburg College Alumni Association Outstanding Service and Dedication Award. He remembers the college for the fine academic training he received, as well as learning high ethical and religious standards and the importance of dedication. Larson taught mathematics and science and coached football and baseball at Mora. He earned an MA at the University of Minnesota and became principal before assuming duties as superintendent of schools. He has been an assistant Boy Scout leader and a member of the Boy Scout Troop Committee. He is a member of the County TB Health and Respiratory Committee and a state advisor, president of the Central Minnesota Administrators Association, and a member of MEA and NEA, as well as the MASA Association and the American Association of School Administrators. In addition, he has been secretary-treasurer, 3rd member, and chairman of the 16th District Committee. He served 2 years on the Central Minnesota Research and Development Council and was vice chairman of the Mora Lions Club. He is a chairman of the Board of Trustees of Calvary Lutheran Church and a member of the Board of Deacons. He's also a member of the Mora Commercial Club and president of the Mora Salvation Army Committee. To Merrill Larson, we present this plaque as an indication of his having been voted into the Hall of Fame here at Augsburg College. Merrill, it's a privilege to be able to All right, finally getting down to my time. Charles Rettram, 34, is a resident of Leawood, Kansas. At Augsburg, he played varsity football and basketball and served as assistant coach in these sports in 1934 and 35. He was graduation class speaker and worked for the Augsburg Echo for 4 years. In addition, he was on the Athletic Board of Control, a charter member of the International Relations Club, and a class officer. Rettram graduated cum laude and received the Distinguished Alumni Citation in 1964. He best remembers Augsburg for the competitive experience which taught him self-control, poise under pressure, and cooperation with others. Augsburg helped me to establish high ethical values, he says, and an attitude of service which I have tried to reflect in my life. Born in Dawson, he majored in social science and history at Augsburg and attended the University of Minnesota Law School. He first started work for Procter & Gamble in 1936. Spent 3 years as a naval officer during World War II. For the past 25 years, he has been district manager of the Procter & Gamble Company in Kansas City. He served Leawood, Kansas as city councilman for 6 years and was chairman of the Planning Commission. He is a member of St. John's Methodist Church, the Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, Kansas City Allied Food Club, Brookbridge Golf and Country Club, and has served on a number of community fundraising drives. Retram enjoys travel, sports, and reading, especially history. He has lectured periodically to college marketing classes at the University of Kansas, Kansas State University, Oklahoma State University, and other schools. Married in 1941 to the former Frances Brandberg, they have 2 children, Richard and Cheryl, and I know that these people are in the audience tonight. It gives me great pleasure, Chuck, to present this to you. Presenting this to you. Congratulations. James Peterson, 34, spent a grand total of 12 years at Augsburg, though not all of them as a student. He played basketball and football and remembers the 27 game against McAllister particularly. It was in that football game that he received a stinging blow on his nose, which quickly changed him, he said, from a passive reactionary to a more aggressive player. I found this role more interesting and constructive, or possibly more destructive, and this newly conditioned behavior persisted. This experience served as a good reminder in subsequent confrontations in my life. I wonder if that didn't change his profile, too. He earned 7 A's, 3 in basketball, where he recalls he observed more than he played. During those 4 years, he remembers I had to pursue my curricular work as thoroughly as I did my extracurricular work, so my credentials were more appropriate for pro football than the academic world of teaching and coaching. He thus became a member of the Minneapolis Red Jackets and later of the Frankfort, Pennsylvania Yellow Jackets. Later on, he worked with the Minneapolis Park Board and assisted with the athletic teams at Augsburg, becoming athletic director and working with Dean Gerda Mortensen on the recreation program. I didn't know you had been a coach, Gerda. That's interesting. After working in recreation jobs in New York City, Peterson and his wife moved to Connecticut and operated a neighborhood settlement house. He then did a stint in the Navy as a welfare and recreation officer in Virginia and Guam. He worked next for the Veterans Administration in Virginia, in Rhode Island, and in Massachusetts before retiring in 1971. However, the fantasies of retirement have evaporated, he recalls. So I returned to work as a recreation therapist at Butler Health Center in Providence. I feel very fortunate to be able to work at Butler as it provides opportunities to pursue both the theory and practice of recreation therapy in very meaningful terms. I suspect that Augsburg contributed more to me than I can identify, he says. Contributions of an institution are made by people, individuals with whom I associated both as a student and employee. Knowledge is important, but I believe most important is how an individual translates this knowledge in relating to his fellow men. I deeply appreciate the good models that I had while at Augsburg. We're very sorry that Jimmy isn't with us tonight, but to receive the plaque on his behalf is a man whom we all know, and who himself is an athletic great here at Augsburg, Dick Pouts. And I'll ask him to come forward and receive this on behalf of Jimmy Peterson. Oscar E. Hansen. I happen to have succeeded at one time in my life a man by the name of Oscar Hansen, not this Oscar Hansen. But people could never remember really which Oscar it was, and very often I was introduced as Oscar Anderson, trying to remember whether it was Hansen or Anderson. But this is Oscar E. Hansen with an S-E-N, who is now retired and lives in Edina. He was in the class of 35. A member of the hockey, football, track, and baseball teams, he says Augsburg contributed a spiritual, intellectual, and social development at a time when athletics were important and dominated part of my life. The greatest highlight in his athletic career at Augsburg, of course, was playing hockey and this whole business of being runner-up for the Olympics. As you know, he played professional hockey and at one time was with the Chicago Blackhawks. I've had many important and meaningful moments in my life outside of sports, however. He says meeting and marrying my lovely wife, Frida, while at Augsburg was quite memorable. The Hansons have 2 sons, Gerald and David. After leaving Augsburg, Hansen completed a successful pro hockey career and pursued his interests also in the business world. As time permitted, he coached some hockey and has been active in church. My life has been busy and rewarding as an avid sportsman, businessman, and private citizen. And I'm very happy to be able to present this plaque to one of the Hansen boys, to Oscar Hansen, a member now of the Augsburg College Hall of Fame. Oscar? Now, I have told these people, both those who are here and those who represent others who have received the awards this evening and membership in the Hall of Fame, that they will have an opportunity for some brief responses. After Giroy has shown us some slides that he says are of interest, they probably go back to the days when it wasn't possible for some of us to go and see moving pictures, so they have to be slides. But you go ahead, Giroy, and I understand my instructions are to take this off of here and give it to you so that you can use it and be heard.
While we were going through yearbooks, and also in trying to come up with the people that you see honored here tonight, we came across a few pictures that we thought you might be interested in seeing. And we tried something not knowing whether it was going to work or not. And that was that we tried to make slides from taking pictures out of a yearbook. And this is what came out, and I hope you enjoy it. Okay. This is Si Melby. Maybe if I run it the right way, it'll work. There he is in his gym suit. Some of you may never have seen it. Here he is with the championship basketball trophy of 1927. This is Art Hauser. We took this from a yearbook. You heard that he was a great kicker. And this is taken, I believe, at South High Field, the old South High Field, and that is him kicking. You see the ball in the air. I do not know whether it is a punt or whether it is place kick, or a drop kick, I don't know. This is John Colasar. Here he is in his football talks. All-state quarterback. Here is the picture that calls him one of the greatest athletes and called the Phantom of the Courts. I thought this was interesting because it showed that physical education, going back. Al, this is kind of one I threw in for you because I didn't have any yearbooks that went back to '09. And so I threw this one in for you because I think it shows that there was a lot of activity going on. There's wrestling, there's the parallel bars, there's tumbling, there's gymnastics, and some boxing and so on. Plenty of activity. But I sure think the uniforms are improved today. Butch, this is the 15 team. second from the left in the front. But here he is as a coach. Here he is as a physical instructor. All the students are bigger than he is. Here's another picture. Here's Choppy Kraus. Choppy, now you know where we got your picture for tonight. The Honor Athlete Award, of course, has been handed down for some years. But I think this is kind of nice to see the trophy, a person who received it in Ozzy Odall, but to honor to whom honor is due. Here is the first baseball team. Those uniforms don't look too bad. Here is the championship basketball team. On that team, you have, going in the front row, you have Chapik Kraus, John Colasar, Luther Sletton, Tappiger, and Severson, and then Ozzy. In the back row, next to Si, you have Merrill Larson, and then you have Dooley Hauser and Jim Peterson. A lot of the people that could have been here tonight, and some of them that are here tonight, are on this picture. Here is the 27 football team. Merrill Larson is a captain in the front. And you have Jimmy Peterson, you have Colasar. And you have Dooley Hauser in the back row, next to Coach Eklund. And here's the championship team. Hauser is third from the left in the front row. He's the captain. And Colasar is in the back row. And Jimmy Peterson. I thought this was kind of interesting to look at a picture like this. They wore the A. I guess we call it the Augies now. But there they are. Believe it or not, in the old Minneapolis Journal, Augsburg used to get, excuse me if I'm catty, but Augsburg used to get some ink. We have trouble today because for some reason if you're not in pro athletics you don't get anything. But they got a lot of ink in those days. I think just running down some of those kind of. Gustavus favored to defeat Augsburg 5. Gustavus defeats Augsburg 26-23. Here's the hockey team. Ed, look at the numbers. Hansen and McInerney. And by the way, Merrill McInerney's son coached with me at Cannon Falls, so I felt like I've known Merrill for a long time. So there you have the Hansens in the back. So they got a McInerney, a Larson, and a Swanson to join them, and they beat them all. Here's the baseball team. Again, a number of the people here tonight are on this team. This is Chuck Rettram in his playing days. This is Jimmy Peterson. I had someone tell me once that Herb Joesting had said that he'd never been hit as hard in a tackle by anybody as he was hit by Jim Peterson when they played against the Chicago Bears. He had a tryout with Chicago Bears and was cut after being injured. And this is Oscar Hansen. And that's the end of my little bit.
Now we're going to have the privilege of a few words from each one of those who have either received the award or are representing those who tonight become a part of the Hall of Fame. And we'll begin with Mr. Tony Brewster from Madison, who is the nephew of Si Melby. His brother Bill is here. It is Bill, isn't it? That's right. And then we'll just go on down the line. And I don't want to pop up here all the time, so we'll just listen to each one of these in these responses as we greet these people too, because we're very pleased that both the representatives and the individuals themselves could be here tonight. Brewster?
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. This is really a homecoming for myself and my brother, and for Si Melby's 3 living brothers. You may find me lapsing into SIG because this is the way my brother and I knew him, and we knew him well. And for those of you who played with him, we share that feeling of love and admiration. It's a homecoming. I'm convinced that when Augsburg moved down the field this afternoon for its winning points and the sun came out, that Uncle Sig was also there and smiling. He loved to win. This institution, striving as it is for academic excellence as a liberal arts college, was in a real sense Uncle Sig's life. This institution has honored him more often than I can enumerate. I can remember as a young lad sitting on Uncle Sig's knee and hearing him tell the stories of Ozzie and the others who are here. It's a great honor for me and my brother to meet these men and to be here as we in this country work on for excellence in athletics, in character, and in the academic world. And these are the 3 areas that Uncle Sig, or Si as you knew him, loved and dwelt most of all. Perhaps one other area where his spirit continues on is his love for Christ, and Christ in the life of athletes. And after his time has come the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I am a member, and I know some of the men behind me are, and perhaps some of those of you in the group before us. But it's in this spirit of Christ in athletics, Christ in character building at a time of great trouble in this country that will carry us through. And so therefore, on behalf of my brother, my mother, Uncle Sig's brother Ralph, who still survived, and his sister Frida, we thank you very much for this honor, and may this spirit continue as we know it will.
We're very sorry that it was not possible for us in the time that we had to locate any of Arthur Hauser's family, and so we had to go ahead without any of the folks being here. It's an honor for me to be here to receive this honor for the Hauser family. Arthur Hauser was a student of mine. He was a young man that I knew quite well. I've met him a number of times since the time that he was a student here, and each time it was a great joy for us to meet him. One time we drove through the town of Little Falls, and we just happened to walk along on the street there, and there we met him. I also remember not many years ago, Arthur was here at one of our homecoming events. Arthur Hauser was one of the great football players that we've had over the years at Augsburg. I think all of us that had the opportunity to see him play remember him as a great combination with Johnny Kolsar and Arthur Hauser. Kolsar, of course, being the man in the passing combination, and Arthur Hauser being the end. As we've also heard, he was one of the great kickers that we have had over the years here at Augsburg. I never will forget how deceptive he was. He would be in the backfield, and probably at second down or third down, he'd step back as though he were to pass, and all of a sudden he would switch over to his left foot and boom the ball way down the field. So being a left-handed kicker and a right-handed passer, he could be very deceptive in that field. So it's an honor for me to receive this award in honor of this man that we all like to recall. Thank you.
I am representing my father tonight, John Colasar, and my mother is in the audience. This is now my son Robert A. Zimmerman. I'd like to introduce her. Mom, will you please stand? After Augsburg, my father went on to teach 19 years at Bloomington High School. He was baseball coach, football coach, basketball coach. Probably it is appropriate if I could read this dedication of the Bloomington Annual to him. He passed away in 1949. The dedication reads as follows. The 1950 graduation class of Bloomington hereby dedicates its first yearbook to John Colasar. Mr. Colasar, who was a teacher and coach at Bloomington for 19 years, passed away December 11th, 1949, after months of illness. During his coaching career at Bloomington, Mr. Colasar had championship teams in football in 1938, 40, 44, and 46, and in baseball in 45 and 47. His basketball teams, although not always winners, had a fighting spirit that was hard to match. His fun-loving character won in friends among all the students that knew him. Although Mr. Colasar will be missed, we feel sure his memory will linger on with the qualities he instilled into the hearts of us all. Thank you very much for this award.
Depends on how far back they want to go. At Augsburg.
No what?
No.
No what? What did you ask the question? What was the question?
How many of them know when basketball was started? Oh, when basketball was started. You know when that was? That's what we want to know. When was basketball? You tell them.
No? All right. I'll go back to the year 1905 and 6. As a lad of 18 when I come to Augsburg. I'll tell you what I found. A lot of good basketball players there, but no place to play. So they goes to work, and they hired a gymnasium, coach gymnasium, which was operated by the coach of Minnesota and his brother. And that's where they practiced, played their games. They played with the Twin City Basketball Association. At the end of that season, they made out a slip of paper and they handed it to the professors. But the next year, they preferred to get a team that would represent Augsburg. If not, a lot of the boys were going to quit college. So they must have pigeonholed it, or what they did, they didn't get no answer whatsoever. But through the grapevine leak, we discovered or found out that in the year 1907 and 8, that we were going to be allowed to have a basketball team at the college. So we went to work, we built it up. So in the year 1907 and 8, we played as a full-fledged Augsburg team. So you can, that's the beginning of the, and this coach we had in the university coach, he was a great help to us. He kind of took a hold of me as a young fellow and gave me a lot of coaching. I might state that there were 3 of us brothers in on the first team, 2 older brothers. But one went to the university, studied law, and the other one went to another college there, signed up there. So I'm not mentioning who we played, but we played 1907 and 1908. And then after 8 and 9, after 16 years of basketball, I got my letter. Yes. Everybody else was called in, and we met in the old dormitory in the dining hall. Professor Swerdrup handed out the letters. After 16 years, that's the first. All the boys were there. Now, most of you fellows that got your letters at that time, you got the same letter that I did. One big A. You asked them, what did you letter in? They said, basketball. Well, still a little humor in me was said to, what did you letter in, Al? 5 different things. 5. How come? Well, when you went through the hard-boiled basketball that I played, that I coached that team, Si Melby, if you wasn't a go-getter, you couldn't be on his team. So I said we used interference. We could block, we could check, and they didn't go to a basketball game then to see these white-striped fellows blow the whistle. No. You'd reach over and take it away from him. And while you was in the act of taking it away, the referee, he'd count 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if you had it, you did well. If you didn't, well, it was held ball. Now, listen, I told the boys that I said, I lettered in 5 things. Baseball, not baseball, basketball, football, hockey, and wrestling for the ball. The 5th one was, we had a long backboard, 5 feet by 3 feet high, and you could surround the ball. That little finger there, when you take that ball and give it that spin, it would spin around over. So I got, for 5, When you fellows get home, tell your grandchildren.
Thank you.
Now, there's just one thing. The last game that I played, about the last game of the season, Dr. Cook, good friend of mine, says, Al, bring your team over this afternoon for scrimmage. When I got there...
That was at the university.
University?
Yeah.
So when I got there, he says, we're going to beat you, Al. But, he says, I have the big shot of the Big Ten, the basketball center, and I want you to pull him down. Now, he says, I'm refereeing the game. You use every nick and crook that I have showed you against him. I bought a pair of new shoes on the way over. You know what I did? I wore out that center. I had him going in the last half. Yeah, he wouldn't substitute. I went to get my shoes. Oh, they were wore out. I figured afterwards that it can't be possible to wear out a pair of shoes in one game. The fellow that sold it to me gypped me. Now, listen. I won't be back anymore. 90, going on 97, 350-mile drive. But I sure appreciate getting this. So I'll be going through town on my way to the burial ground, so that's all I'm going to give you on the line.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
Mr. Thorson said they didn't know, but now they know.
Everything in its order, according to... How's that? Good. You know, my mother always taught me I should be seen and not heard. That's why I wasn't particular about this. And I think it's easier to hear me than it is to see me. But no, I just want to say a sincere thank you for the honor that was bestowed upon me this evening. And when Geroy called up and told me about the decision of the committee, I said to him, I'm afraid you got the wrong number. No, he didn't have the wrong number. It was me. And then when I got through talking to him, and I sat down and was quiet, in my heart there was lodged this, not this. In my heart was lodged this resolution that may I never, at any time in my life's character, do anything that would make the committee change their confidence in me as a character. And when I heard this, when I received this message, it brought back to me many memories. I thought of my days at Augsburg, how happy I was for the time that I was allowed to spend at Augsburg, forming such friends at not just friendship for a day or a year, but forming friendships that was to go on in the years to come and become a source of inspiration and influence in the life of mine. And what do I mean by that? I was so happy when Si Melby's name was placed on this honor roll. Si Melby was a friend of mine that I made the friendship of at school, and his life was a great, shall I say, leading to me entering into the ministry and then having up as my, shall I say, model, the life that Si led among his fellow men. But there are many things to think of. I think of my days at Augsburg when we were playing basketball. I sometimes wonder if you don't think, how in the world did he ever play basketball with his size? But at any rate, I think of how different it was at Augsburg in those days. We wore a shirt that was thrown aside by some of the other players that they couldn't use any longer. Instead of trunks, we had a football trouser, and that's the way we went. And I remember I was asked to go in to see President Sverdrup and make a request that he would allow us to sell season tickets, and we definitely said there would be guaranteed a certain number of games per season, and that what we would like to charge would be 25 cents for a ticket. Dr. Sverdrup said, it's against the principles of the school, so I can't let you do this. So we didn't even have the money to buy anything except what we took out of our own pocket, and that wasn't so very much. But I mentioned a while ago my size, but even in athletics, that has its good points too, although some of them are tough. But at any rate, the championship team from Jewell College, Iowa, were going on a tour of games, and they stopped off at Minneapolis. And we received word that they were going to be at such and such a place, such a night. And so some of the team members went up to see the team and talk to them. And while we were there, we said, do you think it would be possible for your team to schedule a game for us while you're here? And he said, no, our time is so occupied that I doubt very much if we'll be able to do it. And then one of the fellows introduced me to the captain and said, this is one of the members of the team. And the captain looked me over, and then he said, yes, I think we will find time to play you. And then I remember 3 or 4 of us were gathered together at our home talking over things. And then one of the members of the team spoke up and said, I'm glad we beat those fellows. They were so sure of themselves. I'm glad we took some of that out of them. But at any rate, little fellows have a place in this field of athletics too. But my days of activities in the field at Augsburg, they eventually came to an end. But I'm mighty glad that when the whistle blew on my playing term at Augsburg, then I was given the privilege and the opportunity of being placed on another team. And on that team, I played for about some 40 years. And the captain and coach of that team was none other than Jesus Christ himself. And as long as he gave me the signals, as long as he called the plays, I went ahead. And I'm so grateful to God that he allowed me to be on his team for that number of years. But I know that it won't be too long before the whistle will blow, and even my days on this team will come to an end. And my only hope is that when it comes to an end, as my name is called, I'll step forward to get my letter. That letter in the form of a voice from my captain saying, you played a good game. Thank you.
having to follow all these fine public speakers, I think I'm just going to say to the committee and to all of you, I appreciate very much this honor of being selected to the Hall of Fame. And with Ozzy following me, I'm sure he'll give you a talk. Thank you.
You fixed it up. I don't think he's going to make all state this year. He just double dribbled back there. I've still got one of the same problems I had in school many years ago when speech day rolled around. And I haven't overcome it. It seemed like every time I'd get up to speak, my speech would stay in the seat. And I'd wind up so that when there was nothing left to say, I was well qualified to say it. And yet tonight, I do think there are a couple of things that I would like to say. One is, it was a real treat to be here and meet Si's two nephews, Bill and Tony Brewster. We had a nice chat at the dinner table, and it brought back a lot of memories of good old Si. Now, President Anderson used the term justifiably proud. I can't say I can use the term justifiably, but I can say that I am vainly proud to receive this award, and I want to thank the committee because this is one of the highlights of my life. Thank you very much.
When Roy called me, reaching me at Spokane, Washington, while visiting my son, I was really surprised, wondered how he had ever found me so far away from home. When I received his message, I was pleased, I felt honored, and yet I felt very, very humble. And tonight, as a member of the recipient group, I feel a little like the flea that crossed the bridge on the elephant's back. When he got to the other side, he said, boy, we sure shook that bridge. Being a member of the first football team with Con Eklund as the coach, I want to tell you that many of us had never seen a football game before in our lives. Two of us putting on our uniforms in the old gym weren't quite sure how we should put them on. We got to the football field, and after using us as tackle dummies for a while, Con called to me and said, well, let's get into a guard position. I looked at him blankly because I didn't know where a guard might be playing on a football team. We didn't have enough members of the team to make enough competitions so we could have a scrimmage. So we had to split the line, half of the team on one side and half on the other side. And you had to use a little fancy footwork in a guard position. As Con played an unbalanced line, we had to shift to the right or shift to the left. And my first greeting was, Lars, you hip in there like an old cow. Second statement is you run down the field like a loose-jointed giraffe. I'm sure these coaches wouldn't want to hear this. If this was on tape, I'm sure they would withhold the tapes. When we got to Gustavus Adolphus, one of our early games in football, we had a boy by the name of Fatso, who was playing in the guard position. The big Swedes from Gustavus were just mauling our line. And Con called on me to go ahead and take Fatso's place. I said, well, Con, I don't know the signals. So to fire me up, Con turned to Coach Asher and said, what do you know? He said, Lars is yellow. And he needled me for some time and sent me into the play. And I won a position on the team. We lost the game to Gustavus. Since Jim Peterson is not here tonight, I remember him as a boy who was very, very bashful. He was a terrific football player, and it was a joy to play with him on our team. Jim was subjected to an appendectomy in Deaconess Hospital. When he came out of anesthesia, the first thing he said, "I would like to give the head nurse a kiss." And after that, the nurses told Jim what he had said. He was the most embarrassed person you could imagine. I want to thank the committee for the honor that has been bestowed upon us, the joy for calling us my attention, and the committee for this award. Thank you very much.
Dr. Anderson, when I played at Augsburg, I really wasn't a superstar like a number of the men on the podium tonight or on the platform. But playing football and basketball for Augsburg was one of the really highlights of my life. I honestly don't believe I would have gotten a college education had it not been for athletics at Augsburg. In those days, we played both ways. And mostly because of the shortage of men on the squad, football, I had to play 60 minutes for 2.5 years. When I saw the Augsburg College team today, I saw an excellence that so far surpasses the level of our performance, and that's the way it should be. This is a distinct honor for me and for my family, because athletics has been, I think, a driving force in my life. I think it's given a certain of the zeal and aggressiveness that has permitted me to have a modicum of success. And I think it's given the physical strength and endurance that one needs. And for this, I'm grateful. And Augsburg is greatly responsible for this. And to the committee, Dr. Anderson, I too consider this one of the highlights of my life. And I thank you very much for this honor.
Well, I'm getting like Dr. Anderson. It seems like so many occasions at Augsburg, you people get to seeing Dick Pouts at the stand that you wonder, well, what's he doing up there tonight? And every time I do this, I have to look around and see if Edor Nelson is in the crowd, because I know when Edor starts winding his watch, it's time to quit. So, Edor, I'll be watching you. But I'm happy to represent Jim Peterson. Jim and I were very close in many ways, and you know that he and I worked together at Augsburg. I played under him for 2 years. But I never saw Jim play football. And I suppose for some of you who saw Jim get hit in the nose at McAllister, I can tell a lot more about Jim's football than I can, except this, that I think Edor and some of the others who played under Jim can remember days at Riverside Park when Jim would take the football on one end of the field and he'd challenge the whole team to stop him, and he'd take that ball from one end of the field to the other. Isn't that right, Edor? And Jim was a great football player. The story that G. Roy told you about Jim and Herb Joesting, I think that came from me, G. Roy, that Herb did make that statement to me, that he had been hit harder than he had ever been hit in his life by Jim Peterson of Augsburg. And as some of you know, Herb Joesting was one of the great All-Americans from Minnesota, a fellow, I suppose, about 225 and 6'4", so you know what kind of a player Jim was. I think one of the biggest disappointments I had in my life was one night when Edor Nelson and I were working down at Montgomery. Jim came down to us and said, fellas, we're not going to have a football team at Augsburg next year. The school has decided to drop football. Well, now, Jim, besides being a good football player and a good coach, was also a pretty good salesman, because he talked both Idor and I into staying at Augsburg, and I've never been sorry for it, and I don't think Idor has either. As some of you know, then Augsburg dropped football and stayed out of the conference for a number of years, and in 1940 went back into the league in football. And I succeeded Jim in '38, I think, when he went east to study as athletic director here. And I suppose one of the reasons why I was sold on the program at that time was because Jim sort of put me on the spot and put me in charge of the program, the intramural football program in those years. Well, I could say a lot of things about Jim Peterson. The hour is getting late. It's a privilege for me to stand up here and tell you that he's extremely sorry he couldn't be here tonight. His wife has been ill for some time, and he felt he couldn't leave. But he did want me to extend his best wishes and his appreciation to all of you. And I think I'd like to lead a round of applause for Jim.
Mr. President, and distinguished guests and friends, being I'm last, it doesn't matter now if you start leaving. One thing I want to get away from at the time is about the athletics. I'd like to mention Si Melby and Miss Gerda Mortensen. They seem to done a lot for me. I was alone for a while here, you know, away from our folks a long distance, and maybe would go home about once every 3 years. And Miss Mortensen, she don't remember, but she used to take me aside and give me a little talking to, which was very good. But going back to athletics, it's kind of hard for me to speak after the gentleman up here, because outside of hockey, I'm glad Mr. Carlson showed that one little picture of football. I at least knew something about it. So there isn't too much I can say, but I don't think there's too many here that knows my brothers. And I want to correct one error on brothers. Emery is the baby brother in the family. He was too young to be on this hockey team. I believe you admitted Julius. So outside of that, it's been a great pleasure. I believe I have gotten just as big a kick out of being here tonight as being argued over going into the Hall of Fame at Eveleth through professional hockey. The only reason that maybe kept me out was I didn't play in the National League long enough because I was injured then. So I want to thank everybody that had to do with this, the committee and the school. And I'm really sorry that I haven't been closer to Augsburg. I would really have liked to, but through different things and injuries, this may be the reason for it. Thank you very much.
At this time on your program, I think something very inspiring. After hearing all of this and seeing the history of Augsburg athletics right before us, the Augie War Song is printed in your program, and I'm sure there are many good singers in the audience. I know of one, and I'm going to get him up here to lead us in the Augie War Song. G. Roy, get up here.
We'll shout the battle cry. victory far light, history cannot deny. To write a page or two to the Augie fighting crew beneath the Minnesota sky.
I have nothing more by way of closing remarks. I simply want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank the group that was honored tonight. I hope you'll be back next year because we'll have another group next year to be received. At this time, G-Roy tells me there's going to be some refreshments out here. Please stop for refreshments and stop and take another look at these pictures down here. Thank you for coming.